can and make sure you
Let me just go ahead and put it on the screen so that I don't have to fool around with all that and get I don't know how to use it yet, so I don't want to try it until I know how to use it. I'll just use the clicker until you show me how it works.
We were debating on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Is the pool going to be here too? Yes. That's what they
Okay, we're running a little bit late. It is Monday, July.
Bring on the summer.
It's been a long year. March 20th.
Michael Hammond.
Here.
Scott Fidel. Casey Stokes. Here. Bob Boland.
Here.
Mike Buick.
Here.
John Curtis.
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. So I need an approval of the agenda as amended.
I move to approve the agenda for March 25th, 2019 meeting as amended.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Does anybody on council feel they have a conflict of interest with our agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Everybody read them? Come on. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes from March 11, 2019.
Do I have a second? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to the bills. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve bills to March 25th, 2019 and salaries for February 2019.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Page 3, the first item there, the Butler Snow. Is that part of the existing contract or is that outside of the?
This was related to the most recent grant. It's actually called a loan, but it's effectively a grant for the wastewater treatment plant expansion project design.
Excellent.
The $300,000 grant.
Page 8, Holland Architects, the City Hall improvements. When are those scheduled to begin?
The contract document, or bid document, for the front entry ramp improvements are just about completed, so we hope to get that out to bid very shortly here.
Okay, and then once you get bid, a couple weeks before the work starts? Or?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Excellent.
And one final consideration is whether or not to keep the steps and the small piece of sidewalk, and that's the one outstanding question that we need to hear back on, what the cost of that would be, and whether that makes sense or not. So that's really the only missing piece, I think.
Anything else, council?
That's it.
Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Michael Hammond.
Yes.
Scott Fidel. Casey Stokes.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Mike Buick.
Yes.
John Curtis. Jason Segel.
Yes.
Okay. Bills. Do I have any unscheduled public comment, Andy? Ms. Betterton, do you want to make comments under the public meeting or now?
Either way, whatever works.
Well, since this is related to, what really does it?
It's related to the Riverbend, housing project.
Let's
and-
wait until that hearing is open,
Yeah.
and we'll let you make comments then.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And I'm working with, Barry Mantooth on this right now. We are already
I will
working.
advise now is if this is a boundary line between you and your neighbor, I will not even hear your comments. Because that is civil between the two property owners and not the city or the project.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
I'll try to make sure my comments are appropriate.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you. Sally?
And, you know,
Yours is-
I'll wait till
Yours is for
you're
the,
ready for.
oh, you gave me the wrong one, Andy.
I may have signed the wrong one. There were two of them.
This is a resident.
The other one's empty, right?
Is
There's
there
no one
anybody-
signing the other one.
No, I saw, oh, okay. Andy gave me the wrong one. So we will move on to, the next items are under the, what else do we have? Planning Commission.
Historic sites and facilities.
Historic sites and facilities. And variance board. That we reappoint, there's terms. So that's what we're gonna do tonight. We have some letters of interest in staying on. And, hopefully everybody has read through them. So we have, Jordan Hudson first. We're gonna do one at a time. Is asking to be an alternate on the planning commission for a 4-year term. We got his letter of interest with us right here. So, why don't we make a motion? Let's get all of
And he's
them.
here in the audience.
Yeah, Jordan's here, so we'll hear. Also, Kate Collier, Chuck Howard are both asking for, a reappointment of a 4-year term.
Can I ask
So
a question real quick first?
Sure.
Are there more seats available than we have applications or no?
No.
Okay, okay.
No. Okay, so we'll do this as collective. Do y'all wanna hear from Jordan?
Sure.
All right, Jordan. State your name. We got your letter, and just kind of reiterate why you'd like to be on the planning commission.
I'm Jordan Hudson. I've lived here 22 or 3 years. I grew up here. I just like to help out. Cindy Olson said that you guys needed help and someone to fill in. So I said I'd like to try.
And you do live in the city limits, right?
Yes. 5 blocks that way.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions for Jordan? All right. I need a motion for the approval of all planning commission reappointees.
I move to approve Jordan Hudson as an alternate to the planning commission for a 4-year term. I also move to reappoint Kate Collier and Chuck Howard to a 4-year term to the same planning commission.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Canal, Tracy Stokes. Yes. Bob Boland.
Yes.
Mike Wood.
Yes.
John Curtis, Jason Segel.
Yes.
Right. Looks like we got a new member of the planning commission as an alternate and reappointees. Kind of on the same lines, we have our historic sites and facilities. Dennis Johnson, Rita Beckel, Scott Pennell, Phyllis Adams, and Lou Howard are all asking to be reappointed to the historic sites and facilities for a 2-year term. Do I have a motion?
Move to reappoint Dennis Johnson and Reba Bechtel, Scott Pennell, Phyllis Adams, and Lou Howard to the Historic Sites and Facilities Committee for a 2-year term.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Does anybody want to say anything? Phyllis?
Actually, I just have a question. We're supposed to be on alternating terms. Are we all gonna be on the same?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to reappoint Gary Crane to the Variance Board of Adjustments for a 4-year term.
That's Carrie.
Carrie Crane.
Gary Crane.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Carrie, would you like to say something?
Hi.
That's it? All right, roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Canal, Tracy Stokes.
Yes.
Bob Boland.
Yes.
Mike Hewitt.
Yep.
John Curtis, Jason Segel.
Yes.
And thank you for wanting to do this again, Carrie, we appreciate it. Okay, we will move down to the planning, community development. Okay. This is a public hearing for the City Council of the City of Idaho Springs on Resolution Number 5, Series 2019. A resolution approving the proposed final development plan on property known as 2544 Colorado Boulevard and 2448 Colorado Boulevard, Idaho Springs, Idaho Springs, Colorado, and allowing certain deviations from the Idaho Springs Land Development Regulation standards. If there's anyone in the audience, you've already that would like to give public testimony, you've already signed up, that's you. The order of this hearing will be followed. At this time, the staff introduction and testimony.
Good evening, Council. Alan Tiefenbach, Community Development Planner at the City of Idaho Springs. This is a proposal for a final development plan for the Riverbend Housing Project. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on this. Okay, so making sure that the Bluetooth is working there. So the property is 2 lots of approximately 1.3 acres. It's zoned commercial 2. There's 15 mobile homes that are presently there now. These homes were built in the 1960s and they're on the eastern lot. The western lot is behind Clear Creek Supply. This lot is presently vacant. There is an access easement that allows access for building B. That would be the one that runs across the Clear Creek Supply lot. And so that the larger building A, which I'll show you in a minute, will be on the eastern lot. That's the larger lot. And then there'll be a building B, which is on the western lot. And they are proposing 47 units total. So here is a vicinity map that gives you a, sort of an idea. I can get the laser pointer to work. So here is what is now the Trailer Villa mobile homes, 15 homes there. This is Clear Creek Supply. Here is the vacant lot here. Conditions. Again, this is running very low, so I'll apologize. Okay, so Herman and Kittle property and 60% about whether or not you're eligible. You have to do a background check and those kinds of things. The project is being funded through CHAFA, which is the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. They are an affordable housing nonprofit through the state that will give tax credits and help to fund affordable housing. We applied originally in 2017 and our first application was rejected. We again applied in the fall of 2018 and this time our application was accepted by CHAFA. So attainable housing is a major issue in the city of Idaho Springs. Local employers have difficulty attracting and retaining service level employees. Enrollment in Clear Creek School District is declining. There has been little new housing construction in Idaho Springs since 2000. We've had market studies that have shown anywhere between 150 and 800 units, depending on who the market studies are. Either way, they've called for, we need a lot more affordable workforce level type units. Most hotels in town, quite a few of them have been used as full-time housing. Chief Maleka at the last hearing had made a comment that over time there's less of them are now being used for full-time housing. He may be able to address that, and more of these motels are now being used just as motels. The comprehensive plan recommends creating incentives to try to get attainable housing, and it also recommends proactively working with different agencies, including the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, CHAFA. This is a table, and I probably won't be able to see it on the screen here, but I'm comparing what the regulations are against what is proposed. So the minimum lot size is much bigger than is being proposed. It meets all the setbacks. The height is within what the height allowance are in this area of Colorado Boulevard. The East End Overlay District allows 46 feet high. This building will be exactly 46 feet high. The only thing that there's two things that this project will be deficient, and I'll talk about that in detail. The first one is in regard to parking, and the second one is that the building length exceeds what is allowed under the land development regulation. Everybody follow me so far? I talk fast, so you can always tell me to slow down. Here is a site plan, if it comes up, to show you what the project is. So here is Colorado Boulevard. Clear Creek is back here. This area here is where the 15 mobile homes are existing. This is building A. You can't see it, but there's underground parking. That it's a 3-story building, and then as the grade drops about 50 feet from Colorado Boulevard down to Clear Creek. So there's outdoor parking here, and then the parking is underneath the building in this area. This is a community building, so that's where you have your work, your fitness centers, and your meeting rooms. Up in the front here is sort of a little open space that will have like a grassy area, some turf, and some benches. In the back here, there'll be a parking access to get from building A to building B. So I want to talk about the parking first. So the land development regulation requires 1.5 parking spaces for each 1-bedroom unit and 1.75 parking spaces for each 2-bedroom unit that's larger than 800 square feet. In this particular case, they're required to have 76 spaces and they're providing 59. The land development regulation states that parking ratios that deviate from the provisions of the parking requirements may be approved by the decision-making body if the applicant submits a parking study that demonstrates the parking as proposed is the minimum required without creating additional parking deficiency on neighboring properties, adjacent public right-of-ways, and parking facilities. The applicant submitted a parking study. This parking study showed that the average median income, like I said, in Idaho Springs is about $52,000 a year, whereas this development is available only to residents making less than $31,000. That's 60% of the average median income. Now, just a little less than 50% of those will be making that $31,000, but the majority of the people in this complex will be making much less than $31,000. So about 60% of the people that live in this complex will be making between $15,000 a year and $21,000 a year. So those are service level jobs. This parking study showed what the average parking ratios are for similar workforce housing projects in the Denver metro area, throughout the metro area. And what they showed was that the typical ratio for these workforce housing projects elsewhere in the metro area is about a half a space per unit for workforce housing. In this particular case, the applicant is proposing 1.25 parking spaces per unit. I think it's down the board in pretty much all situations now. If you do the research, if you do any Google search, you'll find out that parking ratios for pretty much even market rate apartments are being recommended to go down because parking is so expensive, and one of the greatest is the cost for parking. And the reason why the realistic parking requirements, people that are making $15,000 a year are probably not going to have 2 cars. It allows more units, and it provides incentives. So developers, when they're faced with having to create more parking versus more units, it's more costly to them. And if you allow more units versus more parking, then the costs work out for them better, and it makes it easier for them to build more affordable housing units. It's been demonstrated that car ownership is lower among the demographic that will be served by this development. In many cases, these households do not even own a vehicle, and I think that Sally with Clear Creek Housing Authority might talk a little bit about that because we've had a discussion about that. I think she's gonna testify later. This research that I'm talking about right now, it's been supported by the American Planning Association, Housing and Urban Development, that would be the feds, the Urban Land Use Institute, the Institute of Traffic Engineers, and the Transportation Research Board. So pretty much down the board, all experts are saying you need to lower parking requirements, especially for workforce housing. I also want to note that different land uses have different peak parking demands. So, for instance, the parking demand for retail uses is at 8 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m., whereas the peak parking demand for residential uses is between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now, around in the immediate area, there are motels that all have on-site parking, and these motels do have the same peak parking demand. So, the motels you would expect would probably have the same peak parking demand as residential. However, many of the other businesses, such as Clear Creek Supply, the post office, Safeway, all of these businesses have totally different parking requirements. Most of their peak parking requirements would be in the daytime. I also want to note that within 500 feet, and the reason why I use that number is that's about a 5-minute walk. Within 500 feet of the property is 43 parking spaces along Colorado Boulevard. So this is a map, if it comes up, that I created on the GIS, and I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but this is an existing condition. This is based on our GIS, which is based on the recent Colorado Boulevard redevelopment. This shows this is 500 feet, so that's a 5-minute walk. So within that time, there is 43 parking spaces. Now, and I want to show you some pictures here. Staff usually does not support allowing any development to look at using on-street parking to satisfy their demands or for spillover, but I'll talk about that in a minute. What I do want to show you is that I went out on different days, different months, and different times over a 3-month period. I went the day after Christmas, I went the day after Thanksgiving, Saturday nights at 10 p.m. during the day, and took pictures of Colorado Boulevard in the vicinity of this area. And at all times, I saw maybe 2 of those 43 spaces full. And these are pictures that I took that are labeled with different dates and different times. So staff typically does not support parking reductions or allowing on-street parking to be used as spillover, especially in the case of private developments or if the development is embedded in an existing residential neighborhood. So if it was completely surrounded by houses, they were looking at building it right in the middle of a neighborhood, I think we probably would not be so supportive of lower parking demand and the ability for them to be able to use some of the on-street parking. However, this development is mostly within the commercial area of the city. There's very little residential in this area, and other than the motels, most of these businesses are closed after hours when the peak demand is. It will be a managed workforce housing project, and it's required to remain affordable for, I think that number there is wrong, 40 years. What I heard at the last meeting was 15, so sorry about that, that was a typo. I want to say this, and I'm going to come back to this, far outweighs the benefits of additional parking. Just for the council and for the citizens to kind of see how this is what was originally brought to the city. Staff looked at this. We had major concerns with this. We did not think it fit in the city of Idaho Springs. It looked like the kind of loft type apartments that you would see along like Little Raven down in Denver and the Low Door or something like that. So we talked with the architect over the period of a few years, and this project slowly evolved to become to what you see today. This, if it comes up, would be the very first, so after the initial concept plan, this is the first version that we saw. The difference with this is we had them give us pitched roofs and to break up these walls. And the other thing that's important is, you'll notice these buildings here are broken up. The reason why is we didn't want it to have a huge mass as walking down Colorado Boulevard, so it keeps it more with the rhythm of the other buildings along Colorado Boulevard. When we got our very first submittal, this was the first design, the next design that we got. This got us a lot further. A few things staff still had concerns with. We didn't think that the frontage of this building addressed Colorado Boulevard very well. We've spent all this money trying to redevelop Colorado Boulevard and to make it more walkable. So we had concerns with that. We weren't a big fan of the stripe on the building in the river bend. So after working with the applicant, we've gotten to where, yep. So first thing they did, the applicant bumped out this area here and put decks on here to start bringing people out to activate the street to make it a little more energy there. They took off the stripe. They added more of a panel type to replicate sort of the Argo type mine, and they took these rust colors and incorporated more of a mining type architecture into this building. These are significant expenses, and the fact that these are workforce housing units, when we look at these, the design of these units is a lot better than some of the market rate apartments that I've seen that have been built, and that's just a personal opinion. Here's another picture of it, and this is looking down Colorado facing east. So if you're walking down past Creekside Music, we're standing right now in front of Clear Creek Supply. Here is an elevation. One of the things I want to point out, one of the requests that the applicant is making tonight, our land development regulation has a limitation. It says that no building can be longer than 150 feet, and that's this red line here. Now, there is the ability in the land development regulation that there can be deviations that are given to this code if the decision makers find that the intent is made or that it's not practical or something like that. So I talked to the applicants quite a bit about this, and what we arrived at is if they broke this building into 2 buildings, it would probably be at the loss of 9 units and more than $150,000. Besides that, this building on one side is Clear Creek Supply and Creekside Music. On the other side of this building is the Argo Hotel. So you're not going to see this whole elevation. And because they bumped this building out with all of these little elements here, it really breaks up the building. When you're standing at ground level, you're not going to really see this long roof. Here's a picture of Building B. This is the 8-unit building, if it comes up, that will be right behind Clear Creek Supply. So 2 stories, picture here. And here is a picture of what this development would look like from Clear Creek. Staff was really concerned about making sure that this building did not turn its back to the creek. One of the things that we're trying to do with the activation of Colorado Boulevard with the East End Overlay District is to start making the creek an amenity versus an afterthought. So working together with the applicant, we have the applicant make sure that the architecture address the creek so that when you're coming down the creek, you're not seeing what looks like the back. You're seeing where people are standing out there. There's a picnic area that will be out here with a little pergola. People can stand out on their decks and really start to try to engage the creek.
Is that decks?
There was a community meeting that was held on November 14, 2018. About 30 people, mostly were from, at the time, this community were in regard to Clear Creek Supply, and they had issues, and maybe Herman and Kittle can talk to this when I'm done. I believe that most of those concerns have been worked together to where Clear Creek Supply is mostly okay with the project that they have. I say mostly because I'm not sure if it's 100%. The applicant report, okay, here's what I say, yeah, they've basically been more like 2 years. The applicant has made every design change that staff has recommended. And again, thinking that this is a workforce housing project, money means a lot, and they have gone out of their way to do every design and every change that staff, within reason, and a good project, something that's likely that the city will receive any more chapter credits in the immediate future. 6 feet is the allowed height there, and any other building that was built there now could be built to that same height. Staff agrees with the parking study and finds that even if there was spillover, even if that 59 spaces was not enough, on almost all occasions, there are numerous parking spots within 100 feet, within 500 feet, right along Colorado Boulevard that I've not been able to find, except for a few events, are almost always open. This went through the PC on March 6, 2019. There was approximately 15 people in attendance. Sally Rush with Clear Creek Housing was the only person to testify that evening in support. The PC discussed the parking the parking reduction at length. This was their biggest concern, probably went on for about an hour. Eventually, they voted 4-1 to recommend approval. They noted in general that they were supporting this proposal, but they had reservations about the parking. And they also noted that the benefit of this outweighed the concerns that they had of parking. So basically they said the workforce housing to them is more valuable than additional car storage. So staff recommends that the City Council approve by resolution the proposed Riverbend final development plan, allowing the following deviations to the land development regulations. A parking reduction from 76 to 59 parking spaces, and a proposed 193 foot length of building A, whereas it's limited to 150 feet. And I'm sorry I didn't mention this in my presentation earlier, but it was in your staff report. There needs to be there's a sewer main that runs across the property. There needs to be a slight configuration of that for this project. The applicant has already written the easements and done the legal descriptions. They've discussed them with our public works supervisor, who is fine with this. So if this were approved, part of what the City Council would need to do would be to vacate the existing easement and to establish the new easement for the sewer main that runs across the property. The last thing I wanted to talk about came up just a couple of days ago, is the applicant is now going through the building permit process, and they understand that it's at their risk. But part of this building and permit process is what's called a use tax, and that's based on the cost of construction. And the use tax in this case is $142,500,000. This is not something that Herman and Kittle was expecting and had penciled in, and they're asking for a waiver from this. In affordable housing, workforce housing, by such means as allowing fee waivers, water tap reductions, and expedited by right permitting. It also recommends cooperating with CHAFA and these type of agencies. Allowing a use tax reduction is one of the few incentives that the city can actually offer in order to incentivize these kind of projects. That's the end of my presentation. Questions?
Yes. So as far as the issues with the easement is concerned at Clear Creek Supply, that staff feels that everything is okay in that department.
So the easement, as far as the easement goes, the owner of Clear Creek Supply has always acknowledged that the easement was a legal easement. They weren't really contesting the easement. They were just contesting traffic driving across their parking lot and whether or not there was a safety issue. I believe there's been discussions. I do not see the owners of Clear Creek Supply here. Herman and Kittle told me that they've reached a resolution and that it's amenable.
Okay. And as far as the total net gain of square footage, do we have a number for that as far as what exists and what's being proposed?
Square footage? I mean, I know there's,
of living space.
not off the top of my head. I could
Okay.
figure, I mean, we're going from 15 mobile homes to 47 units. So three times, we're going three times the
Probably
density.
discuss whether the size of the units.
I mean, I could measure, if you'd like, I could run the GIS.
The size was in here. I mean, I was just
It
trying to
is 138,000 something. If you wanted to, I could on the GIS measure the size of mobile homes and give you a ballpark.
Okay. It's not 100% necessary. In regards to the parking, the only issue I really didn't see mentioned, there's a lot of documentation that supports, why there's a discrepancy between proposed and regulations, and I felt that that information was accurate and acceptable. But as far as when you say making $15,000 a year, they probably don't have 2 cars. Are they considering visitor spaces, family, things like that, people that are visiting, people that live at the property? Has that been put into consideration in the parking?
That's not mentioned in the parking study. That was one of the discussion items that the planning commission had at length, is that they did not feel that it mentioned guest parking.
Yeah.
Now, from what I understand, Herbert and Kittle, they build and they manage, so they do have some restrictions on guests and how long they can stay there, and if there's more than one person that lives in a unit, they all have to be able to qualify. So there is some control because these aren't condos, these are managed apartments.
Right.
But no, the parking study does not talk about visitor parking. It just looks at typical parking of typical projects and the typical car ownership of people in that age bracket.
Okay. Another question is, you kind of touched base on it, so it's going to be a managed property, right? You're going to have building maintenance and things like that. My concern with the balconies being right there on the river, cigarette butts ending up in the river left and right. So I mean, are they going to try to make sure that their maintenance department is maintaining trash, especially along the river?
I'll defer that to Herman and Kittle.
Okay.
I don't know what their maintenance is. I can't promise you that if someone throws a cigarette butt in the river, anybody's going to go and get it.
Oh, well, I understand. As far as there being piles of cigarette butts right outside, and then we get a rain that washes.
I'm pretty confident that they do, but I would probably would prefer them to speak to
Absolutely.
that than to me.
I think that was application process for people getting approved. Are there provisions in place from preventing things like people trying to sublet an apartment
Yes.
out of regulation?
And again, that's probably more.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, councilperson, I'll let them answer that.
Okay, do we have any more questions for
Yes.
Alan?
Nope.
Yeah. Early on, I thought it was a really interesting choice that the Trailerville residents had between accepting $3,000 moving allowance or applying for a possible acceptance. I'm wondering if that application is turned down for whatever reason, have they forfeited
It's
the
not
right to
either
that
or,
$3,000?
everybody got $3,000.
Everybody got
Oh,
Everybody
it
got
didn't,
$3,000. They don't have to apply, they can.
every
register.
leaseholder.
Did I misunderstand?
So maybe I may not have clarified.
Yeah, okay.
Every leaseholder of every trailer was given $3,000.
Okay.
And they also have the opportunity to apply, and they have had certain applications. To be honest, there are certain people that don't qualify, and if you knew some of the reasons they didn't qualify, you probably wouldn't want them living there to begin with.
I understand that, yeah. Well, I thought that was a really interesting choice, so that clears that up. Okay.
Okay, any more questions for Alan? All right, applicant, you'll come up. Yes, please. You have to be sworn in by the city clerk, please.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
State your name and your position with Herman Kettle.
Good evening. Sure, my name is Mike Roederer, and the last name is spelled R-O-D-E-R-E-R. I am a representative of Herman and Kittle Properties. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development, which means I oversee all of Herman and Kittle's development activities throughout the 17 states that we're active in throughout the country. I will say this is my second time to Idaho Springs. I've had team members that have made many more visits than I have, so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know that I can do better than Mr. Tiefenbach's presentation. It was very thorough. A couple things that did come up that I wanted to address. First, the building design iterations. I've been with Herman & Kittle for 14 years. We are based in Indiana, and that's where our owners started. So a long time ago, it was a lot of developing the same types of buildings in cornfields over and over, and so to have an opportunity like this has been great. I'm very, very happy with how the two buildings have turned out and the site planning has turned out, and I think the collaborative process between Herman & Kittle and the design team in the city has been great. To the issue of the trailers, right, we did offer all of the leaseholders, well, we offered and paid all of the leaseholders $3,000 for relocation compensation. They are certainly more than welcome to come back and fill out an application. Just because they were assisted with relocation doesn't mean they don't have that opportunity. And the affordability period, I wanted to be really clear about that. So with the CHAFA program, the tax credits that they award, from when the city issues a certificate of occupancy or final occupancy for the building's habitability, and we can lease units and have residents, there's what's called a 15-year compliance period. So during that 15 years, CHAFA will conduct physical site inspections of the property. They'll conduct file audits to make sure that the residents that live at the property fit within the income restrictions that were mentioned earlier. A few things then related to that. After that 15-year compliance period, the property still has an affordability restriction that does not change after that. The frequency and the mechanics of CHAFA monitoring the property change, but there is a recorded use restriction that runs with the property that says we have to have a certain number of units set aside for 30% AMI, 40% AMI, 60% AMI, and so forth. So those really do stay in place for 40 years. And then the cigarette butts, certainly understand that, the trash. The building itself is no smoking. With the tax credits being competitive, one of the things that CHAFA has implemented that developers get awarded points for that make their application more competitive is having a non-smoking facility. So we elected to do that. I think the restriction, Ryan, if I'm right, is 25 feet from the building. So it doesn't mean the entire property is non-smoking. We do have on-site management and maintenance. Part of the responsibilities, not only on the inside of the building, but the outside, to make sure the property is well kept. We'll self-perform some landscaping and maintenance and things like that. Sometimes we will outsource that, have a landscaper, maintenance folks come in. But general upkeep of the property will typically handle in-house. And we run at least a 40-hour work week. Could be Monday through Friday, regular business hours. We might have somebody there on the weekend, on a Saturday or Sunday. We need to keep the weekend open because we do get a lot of leasing and traffic and activity during that time. So I can't tell you that there's no smoking at the property, and I think along with cigarette butts, you do have other issues that you wish you wouldn't have, but you just have to be vigilant and keep up with things as well. And I guess the last thing I'll say, and then I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. A real, I think, benefit for an owner and a municipality with the tax credit program is that the ownership structures and partnership arrangements and the way that tax credits work is that there's long-term ownership, right? So, particularly during that 15-year compliance period, so Herman and Kittle will be the general partner of this limited partnership that takes title to the property. And we're a single proprietor company, Jeff Kittle. He's the general partner of all of our developments. And so you have an owner who has a vested interest, who also happens to run the property management company. During construction, we have Barry Mantooth, who we recently hired out of Denver, that will be our project manager during construction. And so, with the way Herman and Kittle is organized in the tax credit program, we really are operating things under one roof, so to speak, short term and long term. I guess with that, appreciate the opportunity to speak, and try to answer any questions.
Just a definition of long term, is that beyond the 15 years as well, generally, as a company philosophy?
It typically is. We have only sold a few properties since I've been there in 14 years. Mm-hmm. Outside of multifamily, we were in the business of self-storage facilities for a while, and we sold those many years ago, right around the recession. The first multifamily property we sold was, I think, back in 2013 or 2014, and it was a conventional market rate development that you would typically build, lease, stabilize, hold for a few years to sell. But our tax credit developments that we've developed and owned and operated.
So you're going to have property management?
Yes.
Security?
We will typically not have what you would maybe think of when you say security. We don't have an armed, security guard walking around, but we do have on the interior of the building and the hallways, the common areas, fitness center, leasing office, and things like that. We do have security cameras that monitor, and I think by their presence, a lot of times will act as a deterrent.
You guys have any questions for the applicant?
As far as, once people get in and they're on a lease, not subletting that space out, trying to, go under the radar and let other people living there, and et cetera.
Right. So with the subleasing arrangement, I'm going to qualify this. I would do it whether or not I'm under oath. I don't think our standard form lease allows for subletting by virtue of the tax credit program and having to be income qualified. Yeah. We also do run prospective residents through background screening, credit checks, prior landlord references, and things like that. And so I would certainly be happy to follow up to give you a 100% sure answer, but I don't believe our lease even permits that.
So with each year after the lease is up, are you requalified to see if there's an increase of income, and how does that work? So, and this is household income, correct?
Household income, not individual income necessarily, right? So those income levels were per household.
Per household.
And so yes, there's a requalification period. Some states handle it a little differently. Ryan, do you know, does CHAFA do it annually?
Annually, yes, and then they're allowed to go up to a certain income level, which is, I believe, 140% of the AMI, and you're not kicked out. There's a grace period even after that point, so no one's going to be kicked out on the street.
Chief?
Sir.
Do you have any questions?
So I take it the code is you're going to have ample fire alarms in the building as well, in the commons areas. Okay, and they'll be audible inlet and automatic communications to dispatch.
And sprinkled.
And sprinkled. All right.
Yes. Yes. Both buildings A and B.
Okay.
Are sprinkled.
In the apartments as well.
Yes.
Very nice.
Yes. I think building code dictates, but I think they have to have a sprinkler not only in each unit but in each room or a certain number of rooms.
And you were wanting the total square footage of living on it?
Do you guys have a rough estimate of like the net gain of total living space that would be on this property?
It's, I think it's 8,000 square foot for the, or 9,000 square foot for the 8 unit, and 39,000 square feet for the 37 unit.
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah, it's 39.
39.
Yeah.
You mean that over what the trailer
exists,
provided?
yeah.
Over the trailer.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions for Herman and Kettle on applicant? Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
testimony. And now we'll go to public comments. Elizabeth, you're up first. You have 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium. State your name, get sworn in by our city clerk. Oh, she doesn't? Okay.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Betterton. I'm manager for Betterton's Village Playhouse LLC, and we own the property that's at 2500 Colorado Boulevard, the property that's adjacent to this housing project. And we had several questions. One is we wanted to know about the asbestos in the trailers, in the removal of the trailers. We understand there's asbestos, and would like to know what's going to be done to remediate the trailers. This is right next to us. This next question I have is we are on this sewer easement. We have the sewer easement runs through the backside of our property, and we do have the quick claim deed that verifies where it runs through us. And that sewer easement, we come through the back of our property. We have a pump to make sure, because we have a long building, that makes sure that we keep and maintain carefully, that runs to that sewer easement that you'll be vacating. So we want to know how that can be adjusted from our property, so that we can be, how will we? But we would like to know how we'll be able to do that. The next question I have is both properties right now. We have a whole bunch of erosion coming from the Clear Creek supply side on our west side, and our whole retaining back ditch is filling up with rocks again. Joe and I spent 10 months digging out the backside of our retaining wall on our west side. It took us 10 months of hard work, because I can't carry, he carried, I dug. But we had a lot of help, and we did dig it out, and it protects both our buildings, not only the Clear Creek supply, but it protects us. So what we said is both these buildings are coming up, they're both going to be above. So what it does to our building is it makes it in a bathtub, and it makes it an inlet for Clear Creek. So when we flood, we'll flood into the building. So I've started working with Barry Mantooth, who is the project back here with Herman. He's the project developer for Herman and Kittle, and he started working with me on how we could adjust that. And what we suggested is if we could run.
I don't want to get into those details. That has nothing to do with this project.
A retaining wall around our property, just like
Elizabeth,
we did for.
excuse me.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the city.
Okay, the other question, I'm just asking, the big issue is, we have a 3-year project, and our property, right now, we have 4 companies in our building. We are totally occupied. We have an auditorium, we have a roller skating ring, and we have to have our backside of our property. We are paving. We are trying to work with this development, and we need our access to our easement. This development at this time, not only do we go down the middle of the driveway, which is in the Evergreen Survey of 2014,
You're
which has
again
been
talking
documented.
about, excuse me.
Yeah, but we need access to our.
Excuse me, is her 3 minutes up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth, that's your 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like access to our easement.
Thank you.
And we'd like to know about the glacial till and the
Sally,
floodplain.
please come up, thank you.
Thank you.
State your name, who you're with.
Sally Rush, Clifton County Housing. Hi. I'd like to just basically refer to the letter that Clear Creek County submitted to you January 9th in support of this project. and I don't know if you have a copy of that in your house. Good, good. And it was a formal comment from Keith for the county's support, and we all reviewed all the documents. And as we all know, that even you went to speak before Chapel to see that we get this LIHTC project. This is a real feather in our cap for the county. And that's one of the reasons, that was one of the influencing things, was the fact that it was supported so highly by the town. So I'm looking forward to, I go to different conferences for Housing Colorado and so forth, and one of the things that they do is, I get a sense of pride in the whole concept. And that's an important part of it, and I see it over and over again for all LIHTC projects. So I think it's going to be a nice addition to our county. And in keeping with that, I want to emphasize particularly, and we were talking about it back there, is Herman and Kettle has roles as they go along. You know, they went through the planning process, and they're going to go through the development process. The other big process is the management process. And they touched on it, but the other thing that I get from these projects is that's a big responsibility for the project management, because they have to answer back to CHAPA. And there's detailed instructions for specifically a year after the project is underway. So I think that management piece is really important in how the state supports having a strong management piece. I think that's important. And then the other thing about the management piece on if somebody sublets, the other thing is the neighbors will tell on them because everybody wants a fair shake. So that's the other thing that I have noticed with that. Let's see. And I want to also tell you that that's going to fit in with my 2018 housing assessment goals. Thank you very much. I'd like to get my quota out of that. And touching on the parking, the county reviewed the parking, and they did support the decrease in parking. And in my visits with different LIHTC projects and affordable housing projects, as I go through, I've seen that less parking has worked for these projects for all the reasons that they stated.
Okay, there's your 3 minutes.
All right. And
thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
Okay. We have heard from the applicant and the public. At this time, it is 8:03. This public hearing now is closed. And we'll go back to council and discussion amongst council. Council?
This has obviously been a very lengthy process, and the documentation that was presented was extremely adequate. I felt, and I felt like the answers or the questions were answered pretty thoroughly tonight. So I'm done with my question.
And I just want to explain to the audience and to the council why I would not allow Elizabeth to talk on the points that she was talking on. That is a civil matter with the property owners next door on both sides. It has nothing to do with the city. So that will have to be taken up in a civil court amongst the property owners adjacent to the property. I wasn't trying to be rude to you or anything, Elizabeth, but I can't include that in a public hearing.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't know what the boundaries were. I really want to work with this development in any way I can.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Anything else, council?
Did you find out from Carmen whether we needed a supermajority or?
No.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Now, does anybody feel compelled to make a motion?
I'll make a motion regarding resolution number 5, series 2019, a resolution approving the proposed final development plan on property known as 2544 Colorado Boulevard and 2448 Colorado Boulevard, Idaho Springs, Colorado, and allowing certain deviations from the Idaho Springs Land Development Regulation Standards.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call.
Michael Hillman.
Yes.
Scott Pennell, Tracy Stokes.
Yes.
Bob Boland,
Yes.
Mike Buick,
Yes.
John Curtis, Jason Segel.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. This to approve the waiving of the $142,000. I'd like to, since we just got that put in front of us, tonight, I'd like to have a work session and another discussion on that.
100% agree.
Everybody good with that? So we'll table that until, a work session so we can really discuss that, what that means. And Alan gave us a lot of good information about, that being a way to help. Since we don't have a list of incentives to offer any developers, this is something for affordable housing that we could potentially do that, waiving a tap fee or something like that, just like we did the waiving of the decline in parking. It all has to do with affordable housing. Built for April 8th. April 8th? April 8th.
Yeah, I just wanted to compliment Alan again for a really thorough presentation. Again,
I concur.
I guess, yeah.
Is there gonna be are you gonna move on the easements as well?
Yes.
Okay, just wanna make sure, my apologies.
Okay, so we need a motion for,
Resolution 6.
Yes.
I don't see the resolution for the.
The easement is included, it was already approved, and Exhibit B
It's
of
in
this
that
resolution.
ordinance?
Which one?
Okay, okay.
They didn't mention it, I just wanted to make sure that was
By
understood.
approving the resolution there.
Okay, all right.
Make sure you all understand it.
Is it the sewer easement?
Yes.
Yes, Exhibit B to this resolution number 5/2019.
Okay, and they'll deal with us too on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, resolution 6, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 6, series 2019, a resolution amending the Idaho Springs Police Department Criminal Justice Records fee schedule.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move down to department heads reports. Andy?
Mayor and council, you have my report before you. I want to point out that there are several public meetings that are coming up the next couple weeks. There is one public meeting that didn't make it in my report that's coming up pretty quickly. We don't have a work session next Monday, so I want to make sure that you're aware of it. And I put a notice at your seats, and that is a public meeting and open house regarding the alignment, design, and construction of segments of the Clear Creek Greenway, including the Scott Lancaster Bridge, as part of the I-70 westbound Imperial Childer Lane project. And that'll be on Tuesday, April 9th from 5:30 to 6:30. I want to make sure you're aware of that. And the other item that I'd like to call your attention to is we do need a head count for members of council who would like to attend the MetroVision Award event sponsored by Dr. Cog, and that is on Wednesday, April 10th. And this is the city receiving the MetroVision Award for the Colorado Boulevard reconstruction project. We need that head count by the end of the week.
Okay, any questions for Andy? So let's talk real quick about the Dr. Cog. We need a head count like pretty immediately of everybody, whoever wants to attend this, if you want to bring your spouse. This is for our Metro Vision Award. So just get with Andy on if you want to go, because we need to either fill our table or find overflow. We have some other
Wednesdays, unfortunately,
so give Andy a call. Also, if you're interested, I was looking for the date on that. I'm sorry, Lindsay left. Panasonic City. We're going to get a tour that will talk about autonomous cars and things that they've set up over at the Panasonic facility over by the airport. It should be pretty cool.
Cool.
So,
Mayor, that is Monday, April 1st at 2 o'clock, and that is at 56 in Pena, is where the Panasonic facility is. So it's about a 40-minute drive from here, 45-minute drive.
Some of us can ride together if you want to go, because we have to get back for our public meeting at 6 o'clock. So, and we've got about an hour and a half from 2 to 3:30. So again, if you're interested in touring that, I think it's gonna be really cool. Let Andy know so we can get a list, so I can let Lindsay know who's coming with us.
What time was that again?
It's
2
at
o'clock.
2 o'clock.
I wouldn't miss that for anything, actually.
2 to 3:30.
2 to 3:30. You have some more?
Yes, they are in my report, parking management plan, the proposal for the parking about the Greenway on the 9th.
Right.
Yeah, the 9th is the Greenway, again, time, I'm sorry.
That is from 5:30 to 6:30. That's a public meeting in an open house type format, so.
Okay.
It's put on by the county, but we'll be having it here.
Here, okay.
County and CDOT and HDR.
And Greenway Authority. This is kind of a collaborative effort.
Okay, let's move down. Diane?
Mayor and Council, I just have my staff report for your review with no request for action.
Request for action. Any questions for Diane?
So this trial by jury, was that's in relation to those changes we made a few months ago, or is that just something that just kind of happened?
It's just something that's never happened in like 25 years.
Wow, that's cool.
It's usually a trial
Gotta
by
let
the
us know
judge.
about that kind of stuff.
So we can all show up?
Yeah. So everything went pretty smoothly? I mean,
Yeah,
something that
Kelsey
hasn't happened in
handled it
25
like,
years.
like she'd done it other times before, and
Cool.
we won, and the rest is history.
All right.
Jury box is right over there.
All right, Chief?
Mayor and council, I, for, in essence, replaces our 2005, help facilitate the transport of, dogs. Because that's one of Zach's jobs is involving non-aggressive animals.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, we'll move down to public
You
works.
could vote on his
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry?
action request.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the payments to Spradley Bar Ford in the amount of $34,747. Do we need a line item on this?
Yeah, we did.
Do you know what the last?
I need to list that line item in this board in the amount of $34,700. Police Department's 2019 Ford F-150 Police Service Pickup Truck.
Boland?
Yes.
Mike Buick?
Yes.
John Curtis? Jason Segel?
Yes.
He does have a couple of requests for parks, that will come with an increase in pay, and do
25th, 2019.
I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. I actually kind of indicated his knowledge and the things that he can do for the city outside of his job.
Yeah.
He's always got a good attitude. Anytime I've talked to him,
Yeah.
he's asked, what do you need me to do, Mayor? And so I really felt for him to get moved up to this maintenance worker too, is a good thing for the city, good thing for Willie, and I'm supporting him.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you got my phone call several times last year leading up to the Rapid Grass event, and I noticed there was a lot of gravel buildup on the pedestrian bridge, and CDOT was not responding to that, and Willie and Brad got out there, and so I definitely see the efforts out there, and I think it's really awesome that we have great employees such as Willie.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mike Conlon?
Yes.
Scott Pennell? Casey Stokes? Yes. Bob Boland?
Yes.
Mike Buick?
Yes.
John Curtis? Jason Segel?
Yes.
Okay, we have a second request for action. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve $175,000 to JDA Inc. Move to approve for the design and construction documents for the proposed public works facility from line item 2100-5103.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So weren't they supposed to come back to us with some adjustments to that design for the public works facility?
Oh, on the parking?
Yeah, 'cause remember they were talking about
Yeah.
possibly regrading that one little section. There were a couple of things that we'd asked them to look into to see if they were possible.
And I'm sure with the design that Bill,
Improving the actual design.
his staff report about what's going on out there, rain, causing the flood. flood on Soda Creek, all the other water, and they were running around trying to get that. We had a little bit of erosion that CDPHE was called out for at the county. I believe that has been resolved and taken care of. They have an action plan on it, so they'll take care of that. Other than that, Soda Creek's moving along. Unfortunately, we're having a lot of rain, a lot of snow and a lot of water. Of course, I've taken a beating because people said that we're so stupid for working through the winter, and I was like, man, council was really smart last 2 years. Because we had mild winters. But
you win some, you lose some, right?
So
you win some, you lose some.
That's right.
It's great for the skiers, right?
Dan?
Mayor and council, refer you to my staff report with no request for action.
Hey, any questions for Dan? I did see, if you haven't noticed, and I touched bases with Andy, they are tearing down the cement plant silo and everything. What they're going to have to do, you don't see it being removed from the property yet. It's going to be laid to the side because the evaluation still has to be done on that equipment.
Right.
So it'll stay there, it'll come down. So it's happening.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, they took the conveyor and one of the silos on the back down today. So
Awesome.
hopefully it'll be done by the end of the week.
All right. Any more committee report? We still need to do that. Get our committee assignments. Anything else, council? Hearing none, it is 8:20 and meeting adjourned. Thank you everybody for coming out tonight.
It'll get it off the grid. Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, the environmental force. Okay, it's time.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah.
You followed us all the